Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this wireframe cabochon, and it can look something like this. So this is the example I'm going to show you how to make today, and this is just the basic way of framing the cabochon, and I'm just working with an oval one here. So you get the frame all the way around the side, capturing it from the front, and you bail there with your embellishment, and on the back I've made this pretty simple design to capture it from the back as well. You can make the back look however you want to. I'm just going to show you how to do this. And also, this technique works really well if you want to do designs on the front here as well, so have the cabochon as a background. And just to show you a few examples of that, I have one here that I made, again an oval one, where you got the same frame going all the way around, you got the bail, and then the back looks the same as well. And then I've just made this love and hat design on the front, so where the cabochon is kind of the background. So that's just one example. Another one here, I've made a rose on the front. So again, the same frame, and on this one I've just used more wires, more base wires, but I'm going to explain as well how to do that. You got the bail, and then the back on this one I've made look like this. So just another example, you can make the back look however you want to. And then also it's ideal for designs on the front here, where the cabochon is the background. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to show you how to make the basic frame, and then in future videos I'm going to show you different designs you can put on the front. So if you want to learn how to capture a cabochon like this, then keep watching. So it's these things that we're going to need. Now what I have here is my 2 gauges of wire, and that's all we'll need to make this, and they're both regular round wire as well. The first one here is a 1mm, and that's what's going to be the base wire and help create the frame of the piece. And then the other wire that I have here is a 0.4mm, and that's going to be the wire that we're going to do our wrapping with. And this specific one measures 5 by 4 centimeters, and that's just what I'm going to be demonstrating with. You can obviously use other shapes and sizes of your cabochon as well. And then we'll also need a selection of our basic pliers, so let's get it all together and let's get started. So what I've done first is cut my wire ready, and what I have here is 3 lengths of my 1mm wire, and they're about 50 centimeters each. Now this is just what's going to fit my cabochon that I'm going to demonstrate with. So for the cabochon that I'm using, this size and this thickness, so the thickness of my cabochon, as you can see, it isn't that thick. So that's why 3 wires is going to be enough for me. Now if you have one that's thicker, then you might want to add in an extra wire here, base wire, so you might want to use 4 instead. It's the exact same technique, because these are going to lie along the outside, and you have to have enough to kind of come up and just capture the cabochon in place. And also, this length is going to be fine for mine. If you have a smaller cabochon, you can use shorter lengths. If you have a different shape or size, you might need to add more length, because you need enough to go around your cabochon all the way. And then I'm also going to use the ends to form the bail that we're going to be making. And then I've also cut a length of my 0.4mm wire here, so the weaving wire. And again, this will also depend on your cabochon and the materials that you're using. Now in my case, I've got about 1.5 meters to 2 meters, because I like to make sure that I can do the whole piece without adding in extra wire, so without running out. So that's why I feel comfortable working with that as well. So basically I just recommend cutting off as much as you feel comfortable working with, because like I said, if you're using a smaller cabochon, you might need to use less anyway, but rather have a bit more, because it's hard to know exactly how much you'll need. So just cut off as much as you're comfortable working with. So then what we need to do now is start shaping the base wires around the cabochon, and before I start doing that, I'm going to use something to help me along a little bit. So I've got some paper here underneath, and then I'm just going to place my cabochon on that and then draw around it. This is just going to help me to get the right size and shape on all of them. So I'm just going to draw all the way around, so I can reference back to this as well. So I have the size and shape of my cabochon here. So this first shape that we've drawn now after the cabochon, that is basically representing one of the base wires that we're going to be using. So what I'm going to do is take one at a time here, one of the base wires, and then we need to shape this into this oval shape. So you can either use this as reference like I said, but what I like to do just to start it off is actually get my cabochon and then use that to mold my wire around, because I guarantee even more that I get more of a perfect shape that I need. So get your wire, about the middle of your wire here, below your cabochon, and then I just place it against, hold it down with my hands and fingers, and just shape this around all the way, and then do the other side. So both ends come up towards the top there and meet and cross over like that. So just like that, and make sure it's flush all the way around, lying right next to the cabochon. And obviously when you let go it's going to spring out a little bit, so that's where we have the basic shape in place now. That's where then this is going to come into play as well, so the little sketch that we're making. So now we just want to maneuver this so it stays better in the place that we want it to, in the shape, in the right shape there and size. So just gently maneuver these, and then you can hold it against your little drawing and just keep placing your wires until you're completely happy with how they sit. But I just always like kind of molding the wire around the cabochon first, because it makes it a lot more guaranteed you're going to get the correct shape. So that's pretty good for the first one. So now what we need to do is make the next frame, and what they all need to do is kind of graduate a little bit. So this is the outer one that we just made, that's going to be the biggest one. The next one we make is going to have to be slightly smaller than that. So for that, just to help myself as a guideline, I'm going to get my pencil out again, and then what I'm going to do is trace all the way around the inside of what I already have on here, so the shape, and just basically create another of the same shape, but just so it's gradually smaller. So just about 1 millimeter or 2 along the inside there, all the way around. And it doesn't have to be too perfect, just get a rough line in place there. So just something roughly like this is going to now be the guideline for the next one we're going to make. So I'm going to get my next length of wire out here, because we need this wire to then follow the inside one there. So again, what I'm going to do is repeat the same thing, because like I said, I always like to mold my wire around my cabochon first, and then afterwards I use these shapes as a guideline. So again, place the middle of my wire just below the cabochon there, and then just start shaping it around, holding it into place, because like I said, it'll spring open a bit if you let go. Just all the way like this. So it's nice and flush all the way around, so we get the nice shape there. It springs open a bit. And then what I'm going to do is take a time here to then again get it in the right shape so it stays in place, but also we now need to get it down to the size so it's going to fit on the inside there. So instead of fitting on the outside shape that we made first, we now need to make sure that it fits along the inside one. So that's why I like doing around the cabochon first, just to get the right shape in place, and then I'll then gently maneuver it and manipulate it. So I usually take the top ones here and try and get them down while still keeping the curves and the shape in there. And just do it gradually, a bit at a time, and then keep referring back to this like I said. And I know I need to come down a bit more. You can also do a straight on there, pull them a little bit gently so we don't pull the shapes here out of place, out of proportion. I'm getting closer now. And just keep working on this until you're then happy. So this now fits along the inside of the other one there. So now that you're happy with the shape and size of that, so it fits nicely along the inside there, you can probably guess the next step. We now need to repeat this again with a final wire. So again, I get my pencil out and then draw the next line on the inside here. So same thing, about 1 millimeter or 2 further in, and that's going to then be the next size we're going to make our shape with. So in my case now we're going to end up with 3, so keep following this all the way around just the same way. So once you've done that one, you then have that to reference back to. So again, I get my final piece of wire out here, place the middle right below the cabochon, the bottom there, and then just mold it around just like the other times to get the correct shape and the nice curves, like that. It springs open, and then we need to do the same thing, but now we need to get it to fit along the very inner one. So take a bit of time now, maneuver this in place so it gets the right size and shape. As you can see, if I put it on the bottom there, there's quite a bit of space up here where it's quite too high. So that's what I need to work on. I'm going to work on the top ones here where my wires are crossing over each other, and those are the ones I'm going to kind of gently bring down a bit at a time on both sides, while making sure I still keep the curves in there. So just do this until you then have the right size and shape. Keep referring back to it, and then keep working with it. So I've now got my third shape done there. That's the inner one. So now I have all three, and just try and remember to keep them separate so it's easy to tell which one's which. So I've got my largest one all the way down to my smallest one there. So those are the ones that I'm going to be using. But then, like I said, if you need to use more base wires than me, that's just the 3 that I'm using here, then you just want to continue doing this. So if you add another one, you just draw another line around the inside there, shape your last wire. If you need to add another one after that, so maybe 5 base wires, that's completely fine. Like I said, depends on what cabochon or stone that you're using. So you just want to keep doing the same thing until you've done all the wires that you need for your cabochon. So for now, we're then done with this. So what we need to do now is work on connecting all the pieces together. So this is where the weaving wire comes in. So the length of 0.4mm wire here that we already cut off. And then what we need to do is start attaching our 3 frame pieces together basically with this. Now what I like to do is work towards the middle of my weaving wire first, because I'm then going to start in the middle of the cabochon and then work my way towards one side first and then go back towards the other side. It makes it a little bit more manageable because it is a long length we have now. So technically by doing this, it cuts the working length of wire here that we're working with in half. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I start out with getting my first piece here. So that's the biggest one that we made, the very first one. That's what we're going to start with because that's going to be on the outside. So and then my weaving wire here, like I said, towards the middle of my weaving wire. Doesn't have to be precise, just roughly. I'm going to lie that behind. And then what we have is the 2 wires of the base wire there crossing over on the top. So I'm going to just use that opening to weave in and out. So what we need to do first is attach this weaving wire to the base wire and just try and gently hold on to your base wires, not clamp too much because then you might distort it out of shape with the warmth of your hand. So just gently hold on to it. So I'm going to start towards the bottom here, like I said, the middle, because we're going to work on one side first and then move back on the other side. So to attach it, I go around, just need to get this out of the way, I go around the base wire. Now you can obviously kind of drag it through if you want to, but since there is an opening there, we might as well use it. It's going to also put a bit less stress on the wire. So wrapped it around once, and then the other way is basically by going through the middle there, like I said, and then pulling it all through. You're weaving wire all the way. And like I said, because there's quite a bit of weaving wire here, it's a bit easier in my opinion to go through the opening at the top, at least for now. So that's around twice, but that is a way you can do it. And then we need to go around a 3rd time. So through the opening, and then it ends up in the middle there. And then we have 3 coils, and then what I like to do is make sure to squeeze them nice and tight together, so it looks nice and neat. And now that weaving wire is attached to the base wire. So now to attach them together, we need to bring in the very next shape that we made, so the very next step down. So in my case, the second one I made. And then to attach these together, the kind of weave that we're going to be doing is I've wrapped around the bottom one 3 times. Now we're going to move up to wrap around this next one that's loose, wrap that around that 3 times as well. So what I'm going to do with that is it's coming, basically by lying that there now, it's coming down in between the 2. And then I'm going to go around the back of the top one and then up through the middle here. And now because we're adding more of our frames there, it's not as easy to go in between the top there. So just when we need to, when we can get between, say the back one, you can do that, the open space at the top there. Otherwise you just pull it in and out or press it down through the middle there. Completely fine. So you lay it on top, just above the other base wire and on top of your weaving wire there. Pull it up through the middle and just make sure that there's a bit of a gap between the 2, just like that, because that was the whole point of making them gradually smaller. And then we need to wrap around that one on its own, so then again down between the 2 and then pull it all through. Make sure you avoid any kinks and bends in your weaving wire there. That's wrapped around that new one once now, and then push it all the way down, come up through the middle again, pull it all the way through, come around the front and then down between the 2 again. So it's a fairly simple weave. The only kind of a little bit tricky thing about this is the fact that we have these in the shape that we have them in, and we want to try and keep them in that shape because obviously it needs to fit around the cabochon. So that's twice now. Come up one more time to wrap a 3rd time. around the front and then again down in between to make it the third wrap. And then push it down so all your wraps become nice and tight. You can also just get some chain nose or flat nose pliers and just press your wires together, your weaving wire there, just gently, just to make sure they're nice and close together, just like that. So that's now 2 attached together. It's obviously loose because it's only one section of wraps between both, but we're going to add more and it's going to gradually get more and more firm and sturdy. But for now we just need to get all the base wires in the process there. So we need to just come up again through the middle to get ready to attach the last, in my case the last base wire. If you're using more, just continue with this same technique as well until you've used them all. So I'm coming up through there, then I take my smallest one in my case, the last one I made, again lie it above the others so it lies like that, again with a bit of a gap in between, and as you can see they're all gradually smaller from each other. If it's not 100% perfect, you don't have to worry too much, because as we're making the weave down here on the bottom we can still adjust the tops a bit if we find out that one's a bit too large, a bit too small. So it's still not 100% crucial that it needs to be absolutely perfect. We can still move them around. So I'm coming up between the 2 middle ones now, so the 2 smallest one. So now I need to go down in the middle to wrap around that last one on its own. Again 3 times like the other ones. So we need to then come up between those 2 again to just wrap around that one on its own. Push it down every time, just like that, down through the middle, pull it through, and that's the second time. Come up between again. So we're just wrapping around that top one, or middle one on its own, the smallest one of them, and push it down, and once more down through the middle. And also what I just want to say is you can go towards what I find when I'm trying to weave my weaving wire there. When I have space like this in the middle, what I prefer to do is basically bend my wire gently and then push it through from the very beginning here, instead of going to the end of it every time. You can do that, so I go to my end here and then go to put it through. You can do that, but you're more likely to get kinks and bends in your wire as well, and it'll take more time. So I always find that if I have enough space to push my wire through like this, or through in between the rows here, then I prefer to do that. It's quicker if you get the space, and also you're less likely to get kinks, because as you can see I pull it up and it kind of just comes through. Still obviously be aware, because you can get a kink, and if you do, just avoid it, undo it to make sure it doesn't form completely. But then we wrapped around that 3 times now as well. So we have little steps here from this outer wire to the middle and then going to the very inner one. So now all my 3 base wires there are attached to each other. So as you can see, they're not going to fall out if I let go. But obviously it's still loose because we need to continue the weave all the way around the sides. So I'm just going to continue with this side for now and just get up the side a bit and then go over to the other side as well. And you're going to find it's going to be a lot more sturdy. But now we're at the top, we need to come back down, so we're basically going to create a bit of a pyramid or triangle. So I'm coming up between the 2 middle ones. So I need to wrap around the middle of my base wires on its own 3 times. That means I go down between the outer 2. So just always find the path where your wire needs to go, so you're wrapping around one base wire at a time 3 times. Come up between the top 2, middle 2. To wrap around there once, go back down between the outer 2 to make it a second time, and as you can see, this, because my wire kind of got stuck, it pulled this outer one a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. Just gently push it back in. Like I said, the top ones here, they're still open, so we can still manipulate them. Just try and make sure it doesn't get pulled too out of shape. So like that. That's the second time. Come up between the inner 2. Pull all your wire through. And then down between the outer 2 to make it a 3rd time. Just like that. So that's the next step, going back down again towards the outer wire. So now to wrap around the outer wire on its own, we just wrap around, we're coming down between the two outer ones. So wrap around the bottom of that and go straight down between them again. And pull all your wire through. Push it down. Again, around that one on its own. And push it through the outer two. Push it down. And then one more time to make it 3. Just like this, push it down. Then once you've done this, you've basically made your very first triangle there, because this is the weave that we're going to be doing. There's little steps, but it's kind of forming a triangle, just that on its own. So this is all you want to keep doing basically, all the way around the sides here, on both sides. Like I said, start with one at a time, keep building it up. So now we've done one full triangle. We now want to step back up again to go towards the inner frame there, the inner wire. And all we need to do is just basically just like we started out. So I'm coming down between the outer two. To wrap around the middle on its own, we need to come up between the inner two. Like that. Push it all the way down. Down between the outer two. So now we're wrapping around that middle one on its own. And you'll find the more you do of your weave, the more sturdy this whole frame is going to be. And be able to hold itself a lot better in place. And it's going to be easier to hold with your hand as well. Because like this hand, you obviously want to be careful how firmly you hold it. But the more weave you've done, the more the frame kind of holds itself in place. So just keep going with this weave. Wrapping around this middle one 3 times. Going to the top one 3 times. And then working your way back down towards the outer one again. So you're basically creating triangles all the way along. And like I said, work your way up to the side, the other side, and then once you've done that, then I'll show you what we do then. So I've now kept weaving up the side here on the first side I showed you, and I've left a bit of space, so you don't want to weave all the way up to where the wires meet just yet. I've gone back down to the middle again, and then weaved about the equivalent of the other side as well. So now what we need to do, before we weave all the way up, is just use these base wires to then start creating what's going to end up being the bail. What you also just want to do with the shape that we now have here is just measure it against your cabochon, just to make sure that we're still on the right track, because chances are it might have gone a little bit out of shape compared to the original shape that you put the wires in, as long as you kept the nice curve in there and the proportions. Because if you look on mine, if I just place it on top like this, you can see it doesn't fit perfectly. It's actually a bit too big, but if I place the cabochon like that and then press my wires together, so it's going to sit flush around the cabochon, just like that. It's going to fit absolutely perfectly all the way around. And you want to make sure as well that on the back, that the back of your cabochon is lying kind of flush against that first, so the largest shape of wire that we did, so the first one on the back there. So as you can see, it's going to work just fine. So if it's not 100% perfect when you just lie it like this, don't panic too much. And also if it's a little bit out of shape otherwise, so even when you squeeze it in, you can still now just gently shape it a little bit if you need to. And you want to do that now before we start making this part of the bail, because what we're going to be doing is bending some of the wires on the top there. So once you're at this place and you're then still happy with the shape, or if you just correct it a little bit if you need to, what you also want to make sure of is that your base wires are lying like this. So you got them basically crossing over each other, alternating just like that. So kind of intertwining. But what mine ended up doing that naturally, because when we laid the shapes on top of each other, I made sure that the same ones crossed over on all of them, so they naturally ended up like this, because we're going to use this to then also finish it off. So once you're happy with this, we can then now start bending to get the bail. So for this I am going to get my cabochon out, and this part can be a little bit fiddly because I like to make sure that I hold it all in place while I'm bending my wires, just to make sure that it sits how I want it to sit, so I'm bending them in the right place as well. So I kind of hold my cabochon and then my wires around so they're sitting just how I want them to sit. So that crossover where all the wires are intertwining is going to sit right at the top of the cabochon there. So just hold on to this the best you can. And then what we need to do is get some flat nose or chain nose pliers out, And then the two back ones, so the very back one is coming from the one side and then the furthest back from the other side, those ones we want to bend first. So I'm going to just make sure it's lying how I want it to, and then take the very back one first, and I'm going to bend them so they don't end up right next to each other. I want a bit of a gap there because I'm going to then bend the next ones as well. So start with the very first one from the back, and then just look at it from the front. So just see how much spacing you want between them. So place your wires exactly where you want them. Place your pliers there on your wire and then bend it back. So this now kind of sticks upwards like that. You can look at it. And then we need to do the same with the other one. Obviously we need to try and get it in proportion, so it looks nice and even on both sides. So I'm going to grab my wire with my pliers there and then bend it upwards about a 90-degree angle. And then you have both your wires sticking upwards like this with a nice gap in between them. And how big you want that gap to be is up to you, but I like to just have a little bit of space there because now we need to move on to the next ones. So the very next wires that are intertwining there, grab the first one. I'm going to go in a little bit further, and these ones I basically kind of do want to meet up in the middle where I bend them. So grab it, bend it upwards. You can always refer back and have a look at it. Grab the other one and then bend that upwards as well. Just like that. And then you can look at it. If some of it is a little bit out of place, you can always adjust it now. Rather do that now, so you end up with it looking exactly how you want it to. So these 4 wires now bent upwards. All we have left that's crossing over are the 2 front ones now. So now that we got these wires in place and we're happy with how they're sitting, so from the front, just keep checking it, making sure that your frame sits correctly all the way around your cabochon there, and then you can see if it's proportionally right and looks the way you want it to look. So don't worry about these anymore now because we're not going to be making the bail just yet, but we are going to be using these wires for it. So what we have left is these two at the front crossing over still. You can just gently push them out of the way if you want to, because we're not going to be using them just yet. We're still going to be doing our weaving. So we can take the cabochon out again, but because we now know how these wires are going to sit, so where we bent them back, we now want to just continue this weave a little bit. So just the exact same weave, but then finish it all the way up right next to where those wires are bending. So just keep weaving this on both sides as far as you can get up while still keeping the weave nice and neat. So I've now kept wrapping my wire with the same weave all the way up the sides there until I can't get any further, so till my weave runs into the first wire here that we bent upwards all the way at the back. So then what we can just do again is still double check with the cabochon itself. Always keep referring back to it just to make sure you're on the right track the whole time. So as you can see, obviously it's still a bit open because we haven't tightened it yet, but then when you place the cabochon there and then press your wire, the frame all the way around it, you can see that this is going to fit absolutely perfectly. I'm going to sit just like this. So now what we need to do is start the bail. Now at this point you have these 2 ends left of your weaving wire. What you can do is cut them off now if you feel they're a bit in the way. I personally prefer to leave them on there. We might not need them, but I'd rather leave them till the end, and then if I don't need them I'll just cut them off, but if I do, they are there. So you can cut them off if they're in the way. If not, just kind of get them out of the way, so bend them downwards like this. Because then what we need to do now is start wrapping our bail. So for this I'm going to start with a new length of my 0.4mm wire here, and in this case I'm just leaving it on the reel. You can cut it off if you want to, but you want a pretty decent long length to be able to do the whole bail, so that's why I prefer to just leave it on the reel. That way you don't have to guess how much you need and you won't have any wastage either. So what I want to do with my bail, because technically we have these 4 wires that are all going to create the bail, but it's going to be in 2 separate layers. So I'm going to work with 1 layer at a time. So I'm going to use the 2 back ones first. So the very first wires that were bent to the back, that are furthest out to the side here, the very bend, those I'm going to use first. So what you can always do is just gently press the others a bit out of the way to give you a little bit more workspace, make it easier to do your wrapping. And then also you can just bend around the top here, just bend them more outward a little bit. And then what I want to do before I start wrapping them is actually shape them in place as well. So I'm just going to put my cabochon back in, just so I make sure that the whole thing sits correctly and how I want it to. So keep hold of it. And then first I want to make sure that they're kind of coming straight up, so that they don't have a curve like this, but I want them to be more straight. So you can just straighten them out with your fingers here or your hands. And you can also, you can use some nylon coated pliers as well, or just get your flat nose and then gently go in and straighten them out, making sure you have them in the exact place where you want them to be. So what I want when you're looking at it is for the actual wires to be straight when they're coming up here, but to also be coming out at a bit of an angle. So don't go straight up from the middle, but coming out at a bit of an angle, and the other side as well, and pretty even on both sides. So I want to shape them like that. Now to begin with here, I just need to have my cabochon in place, because obviously as you can see on the back there we have quite a big gap, but we need to know exactly where it needs to be compared to each other, so the two sides, so how big that gap needs to be before we continue wrapping. And we need to know that by placing the cabochon in and then just kind of making sure that it sits exactly how you want it to sit. All your wires, so the frame here is lined flush around the cabochon as if it was caged already. Try and keep hold of everything. This is kind of just a bit fiddly, just until we get going with the wrapping. It'll be much easier. We just need to know where we are to begin with. So until it sits how you want it to sit, roughly like this. And then I'm going to then take my weaving wire here. I'm coming around and going basic down in between here in the middle. So what we're going to do with this, how I'm going to wrap the bail, is the figure of 8 weave. So I'm going to come down there, come over to the other side, and then this is where we need to know how big that gap needs to be, because this weaving wire is now going to hold it in place where we want it to sit. So make sure that it sits exactly where you want it to sit, so that gap is just the right size, something like this. And then wrap it around on this other side, all the way down, push it all the way down like that. And I'm going to do that twice. So wrap around once and then wrap around again, just like that. And again, I just like to press down my wraps with my flat nose or chain nose, just like that. And then I'm just going to take it out here, see how it looks, see if I'm still happy with everything, and see if all the wires are sitting how I want them to sit. And then just basically have a look at it all the way around, place your cabochon in, look on the back, see if it sits correctly. So you don't want your cabochon to be sticking out too much. If you look from the side here, it needs to be quite flush on the back. So you don't want to, for example, sit like this. The bottom wire there, so the largest circle that we made, or shape, needs to be pretty flush with the back side of your cabochon. So just like that. So if you're happy with that, that's now sealed in place. You can then actually let go of your cabochon, and then we can just continue making the weave. So that was kind of the fiddliest part over, because we had to kind of hold it all in place here with our hand while we're wrapping. So we can just continue that now, because we know it's the right size and shape and it's sitting correctly. So we just wrapped around this on the opposite side twice around, and again I'm coming down in between in the middle here. And this is just a figure of 8 weave, and I'm just going to wrap around each outer wire twice. So I've already done that across behind the back again of the other one on this side, and then need to wrap around that twice on its own. So just like that, push it down one more time, and you're coming down in between the middle again, and then push it all the way down. So every time I do a wrap, I push my wire down to make sure that the wraps on the side there get nice and even, so you end up getting a really nice and neat bail. Continue with this, go all the way over to the other side, behind the back of it, wrap around the other side here twice, just like that, and then we're down in between in the middle again. And now just remember that I'm only using the 2 back ones for now. These 2 at the front, they kind of look a bit in the way, but just try and push them a little bit out of the way, just gently, and just focus on these two back ones for now, and we'll come back to the other ones afterwards. So right now we're only wrapping around these 2 with a figure of 8. So what you want to do now is continue this figure of 8 weave up these 2 back wires. So ignore these 2 front ones and the other ones and all your tails here. You got quite a few wires going on, but just try and focus on just the 2 that you're wrapping now. So these 2 back ones. And you just continue this a while up. It's kind of depending how large you want your bail to be. What I'm going to be doing is when I get to kind of the middle point of the bail, as you can see I graduated it outwards. When I get to about the middle point here, what I'm going to do is actually put a bend on each of the sides and then have it graduate back inwards again, because I like that shape of my bails, and it's also going to look nice with what we're going to be doing with the front 2 here. But that's what I like to do on mine. I'm going to show you that when we get to it. So just continue wrapping here, maybe a couple of centimeters up, and then I'm going to show you how I do the next step. So I've now kept wrapping here until I reach the point where I feel it's going to be about halfway up the bail. So what we need to do is start wrapping, but where we graduate inwards again. And to do that, what we need to do is reshape the base wires here a little bit. And I'm going to take my either chain nose or flat nose for that. And then you want to make sure that your weave is pushed all the way down, so it's nice and even and nice and close as well. And then right above it, where the wraps on both sides are, I'm going to put in my flat nose pliers and then just gently do a little bit of a bend back towards the middle of the bail. The same on the other side. Make sure it's pushed down, grab it, and then bend it inwards a little bit. So then up here, your wires are going to start crossing over each other again. That's just the ends of them. It's not going to be actually crossed over where we're wrapping. But then just gently, and you kind of want to just do this by eye so it looks nice. So the graduation inward is going to be about equal to the graduation we had outward there. So once you're happy with that, we can then start wrapping again. And because your wire's up here crossing over now, you can always just gently bend these parts outwards, just with some nice curves, so we don't put too sharp of a bend in there, just so it's easier to get down in between and wrap them. But now what we need to do is wrap so it's graduating inwards again. This is a little bit different than doing it how we did before, because what you do when you wrap wire, the wire naturally wants to slide down towards the narrowest point, which is why when we wrap the wire to graduate outwards, it's quite simple, because the wire naturally slides downwards towards a narrow point. In this case, when we're wrapping, the wire is going to want to slide upwards, because that's a narrow point. So that's something we have to be aware of. So I've finished wrapping on this side, I need to move over to my other side. So what I do to make sure that my wrapping still stays nice and neat and even is that when I move over here to start wrapping on the opposite side, I'm going to hold down the side that I just wrapped with my other hand here that I'm holding my whole piece with. So keep hold of that and push it downwards. So you're pushing the weave close. So just like that. And then we're going to continue the wrap over on the other side here. Make sure you're holding that down. And then when you're pushing this down on the other side, you don't want to put too much force into, too much tension into this. You kind of just want the wire sit where it wants to sit and just guide it in place. Because if you pull too tight, what you're going to do as well is pull the base wires closer to each other, which means you're going to change the shape that you just made basically. So just do it gently. So that's once. You need to go around again. So you're basically just guiding the wire around. Just like that. So that's that side. We need to come back over to the other one. And while you're working with it here, it will move, as you can see, because it will want to climb upwards. But just as you're doing the wrapping on the other side, just always hold it down. That's the most important part. Come back to the other side again. So I'm going to hold this side that I just wrapped and push it down. And then wrap around this one. And just don't pull too hard on the wire. Just have a nice even tension. Press it down and just guide the wire with your finger without pulling on it really. Once more, just like that, and just keep pushing them down. So that's now one on each side, and you just want to continue like this. Move over to the other side, so I hold on to the one I just wrapped. Go over there, get your wire around, and just guide it in place so you don't pull on it. And once more, there we go. Push it down. Now hold that one down while you move over to the other side again and just continue. And careful not to pull on the wire. And that's how you build up the weave here where you graduate inwards. And just continue, and you want about the same length that you have on the other side here. So this part, like I said, is going to be just about the middle of it. If your wrapping doesn't become completely neat, don't worry too much about it either, because it is the bail. We're going to be shaping this, which is going to mean that it's not going to matter as much if it's not 100% neat. But just try and do what you can do. And also we're going to cover part of it up using the other wires here. So keep wrapping until you've finished the whole length of the bail. So I've now finished wrapping the full length of my bail here, and it looks like this. It looks a bit like a wire alien, but if you just focus on the wires that you're working with, it makes it a little bit easier, and just kind of work around the other ones. So what we need to do now is, I'm done with this weaving wire that we've made the bail with, so I'm just going to cut that down, just so I still have a little bit of length left, maybe about 10 to 20 centimeters, because I prefer to leave my tails, because we might want to use that to either help fasten it in place or use it for something else. So I've cut that down now, so we're just left with that short length. And then what you can do now is either leave that back one like this while we start working on the front ones here, or you can bend it back into the shape that you want the bail to be. Now it's completely up to you what you find easiest. I'm going to bend it back because that means it's a little bit more out of the way. So for that, I'm just getting a crochet hook here. I like using them to create my bail shapes and get different sizes. Make sure the whole weave is pushed down, and then right there in the middle where we had it graduating outwards and then back in again, I'm going to place my crochet hook behind there and then just start gently forming this around. So bend it back around, keeping hold of your weave as well, your weaving wire, to make sure that it's pushed up so it stays nice and tight. And bend it all the way back, and then you can just keep working with it and adjusting it until you're happy with how it sits. So then the end of your bail there is going to end up towards the back, just like that. And you can always bend it back a little bit while we're then working with these two wires at the front. So to then create the second part of the bail there, just going to get all the tails here a bit out of the way so they don't get in the way while we're working with it. Bring these two front ones maybe down a little bit more, because what we need to do is work with the two that are basically the middle ones on each side. So these two that are sticking up are kind of crossing over each other there. First, what we need to do is I want to straighten them out, because they've got a nice curve in them now, but they're crossing over each other. I want them to come up straight and just basically passing right next to each other. So just do that with both of them. You can use your fingers, run your fingers over them, warm them up, straighten them out. You can also use some pliers, use some flat nose here, or chain nose to just help kind of gently bend them to get them nice and straight. So now that I have my two wires here coming up straight next to each other, what I'm going to do is grab my 0.4mm wire again, and I'm just working with it off the reel again. And I'm just going to attach this first, just basically starting out like we did with the other one. Now you will find that you have a lot of wires going on here, so just if you can move some of the other wires gently out of the way while you're working with these. I'm going to leave a bit of a tail to hold on to, and then start wrapping. First attach this around one of the wires, push it down again, and I'm just doing the same weave, so basically the figure of 8 weave, and I'm coming up in between, going to cross over to the other side, up in between, now the other side there, push it down, once more, so twice around each side before you then pass back over to the other one. And you just want to keep doing this, make sure they sit right next to each other side by side so you get pretty much a straight line, because this is going to then wrap around the top and all the way to the back of the bail and just give a bit more embellishment. So I've now continued making my weave here, and you just want to make sure that you get the right length. So to test that, I'm just going to push up that weave at the back bail there, to the main part of the bail, just to make sure it sits right, and then push this down as well to make sure this is nice and tight, because you don't want it to kind of accidentally be a bit longer. You turn it around and then you end up afterwards squashing it down. Turns out you don't have enough. Just make sure you push it down, and then I'm going to shape it around the top of the larger part there, around the back, and then have it come down, and then it needs to meet just roughly the end of the previous bail. So I know this is the perfect length now, so just open it back up a bit to get it out of the way. So now I know I basically have my 2 sections of the bail done. What we need to do now is connect them at the back here so the actual main bail is going to be completely secure in place. So since I know it's long enough now, that small part of the bail, I'm going to cut off the wire, leaving a tail, just a decent length tail here again, just to make sure we have something at the end to secure this with. So now we have the 2 sections done, like I said. So to secure them in place, we need to start with one at a time. Before we start securing it, I just want to make sure that I have all my wires here organized, because we have quite a few tails now with a 0.4mm wire. I just want to get them out of the way so when we are securing this in place, we're not getting tangled up with them. So just secure them out to the sides, wherever they're coming from. That one's at the front, this one's to this side, and then I've got the 2 over here. And then this one is the one that's actually coming from the large part of the bail there. So I'm going to use that now to secure that large part of the bail to the framework as well, so the back part of it here. So it's going to end up basically being one secure piece. To do that, like I said, just get the others out of the way here. Put your wires gently into place and out of the way, just how you feel comfortable working with it. I'm going to get that tail that I used to create the large part of the bail, it's still attached. And then we need to create it, we need to fasten it here to the frame right at the back, right next to the bail. So what I'm going to do is, if you look from the front or the side here, then you have those 3 wires. In my case it's the 3 wires. I'm just going to focus on the very back one here. So basically I'm going to be wrapping this tail from the bail around the back wire, just that one on its own. Let's get the other ones out of the way here. So I'm going in between the one furthest back and the middle base wire from the original frame. Then pulling this all the way through. Make sure you don't get any kinks. Just like that. Make sure it stays straight on the back, so you don't want to pull it too tight so it pulls further towards one side. You want to make sure it stays straight. Wrap it around, and then I come back around the bottom of my base wires of the bail here, go below and up in between the 2, just like that. And then you want to push it up, because that's going to help push up the whole weave here for the bail and make sure that it kind of just stays in place and stays nice and tight. Then wrap around one full time around that side. So again, around that base wire on my left side in this case, and back up through the middle again. Just like that. So that's one side. So now to move over to the other side, I'm still using that same tail, getting the others out of the way. So it's coming from, in my case, the left side there. We're basically continuing then over to the other wire as if we were doing that figure of 8 weave. So it's going to blend in nicely because of that. So I'm coming up in between the 2, so I need to go around the one on the other side here once, come back up between again, tighten it, and push it up, and then you'll be able to see that it's going to blend in just nicely with the weave for the bail there, so it's not going to stand out at all what we're doing now. Just make sure it sits correctly, and then I'm going to do the same again. So on this side, again, we want to just go around the very base wire further to the back there. Come up in between that and the middle one of the frame, pull it all the way through, like that, and then pull it nice and tight. Make sure your bail is sitting nice in the middle there. Come back around the side of that, and then wrap around the right one, in this case the same way we did on the other side here, and come up through the middle just to secure it in place. And do that another time. So just like that. And make sure you push it up so this stays nice and tight, because that secures this whole thing in place. Because you kind of now have 2 anchors, one on each side, that helps push that upwards and make it nice and secure. So now that that's secure in place, and you can see here I'm moving the tails with the base wires there, and the bail is staying nice and securely in place. So once you've done that, what I can do now is actually get rid of this tail that we have left that we used to secure it. So I'm going to get my flush cutters here, and then just kind of on the inside of the bail, because I don't want any ends on the outside of my piece, and cut it off, and then just get some chain nose or flat nose to make sure to squeeze that end in place. And I just always like to take the tip of my pliers right on the end and then roll it in the same direction that the wire is going around the base wire, so that really tucks it in there. So that's now the big part of the bail in place. What we have left is that little one that we weaved before. So bring that all the way down, making sure it's lying exactly how you want it to. Check the front first, it looks nice like that, and then right at the back, and make sure you push it up here so it's not too long and also not too short, so you have the exact right length that you need. So that's going to lie like this and add a bit extra detail to the pendant and the bail. And then to secure that in place, we're basically going to be doing the same thing as the other one. We now just kind of have an extra layer on top. So I'm going to get the tail that I left on it, just see where it's coming from. It's coming from this side, so I'm going to start on that side first, make sure it's lying right where you want it to, push it upwards, and then I'm going to first make sure you have all your tails out of the way here. I'm going to first then, mine is coming up from the middle of the two there, in between them, then I'm going to go around the side, and then below the tail with base wire from the part of the bail that we just fastened there, so that 1mm wire, I'm going to go below that and then around that. So it's kind of pulling that part downwards now. It's going to go around that fully once, so wrap around and then push it up just like that, because that's going to help secure this part in place. Again, make sure that it stays in the middle, because we need to do the same on the other side. And then I'm going to do the same thing, so go around on the side here of the frame, between the very back one and the middle one, so we get it as nice and secure as possible. Pull all the way through, just like this. So we're basically doing the same thing, we just added an extra layer on the bail. Come around, back around again, and then underneath the base wire for the big part of the bail. And then I'm gonna, you can wrap around that once now again if you want to, but I'm just gonna go in the middle here. So down in between the two middle wires, so the ones that are forming that little part of the bail. Wrap around once, push it up, make sure to push it up nice and tight. Come around again, down in between again, as if we're just continuing that figure of 8 weave. That's how we're making all this fastening now blend in. Go over to the other side, and then I'm coming underneath the left side of them two middle ones. I'm going to go over the side one here of the big part of the bail, so kind of the middle layer, if you can say that, on the left side. Doing the same thing, fastening this, pull it tight and push it up, and then we need to come in between the last and the middle wire there on the frame, pull it all the way through gently so you don't get any kinks. Come back around again, and then around the outside one that we just wrapped around once, below that and up in between, and again push it up. So it's really getting nice and secure now. And it's still, because of how we're fastening it, it's going to blend in completely with the weave that we've already done. Just like that. So we're back to the middle now. I'm going to go down in between the two very middle ones. It's coming from that small part of the bail. Just wrap around that one side you're on now once, and then one more time. And then basically that's fastened in now as well. Make sure to push it up nicely. So now we have the whole bail fastened in place, and it's really nice and secure. So we can now get rid of this tail as well, because we're done using that. So just wherever you feel it's gonna fit in perfectly on yours, just wrap it around somewhere or where you already have it. Make sure you then cut it off nice and close, but so when you just tuck it in place, it's going to end up kind of on the inside of everything and not have an end sticking out somewhere. So just cut it off, and then again I take my chain nose pliers here and just squeeze down the very end, just like that. And then we have the bail nice and securely in place. So now we're not far from being done. All that's left to do really is actually capture the cabochon in place and then secure the back as well. Before I do that though, I'm just going to kind of get rid of some of these ends of my 0.4mm wire, because there's quite a few. I have 4 left and I don't actually need them for any more. So I know I've used all the ones that I need to do. So what I'm just going to do is go over one at a time. Just start with one, go in where it's coming out, again cut it off towards the inside, cut it down there, and then I'm just going to again do that flat nose or chain nose pliers, press down on the very end and then roll it in the same direction like that. It's going to really tuck it in. So basically the end is lying a bit on the inside of the frame there, and you just want to do that with all of your tails of your 0.4mm wire. So get rid of all of them, and then I'm going to show you how we secure the cabochon in place. So I've now got rid of all my 0.4mm ends there, so all we have left is the frame and then the ends of a 1mm wire that's making up the base part of the frame and the bail. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to get the cabochon, place it in, because all we have left to do now is capture this in place. It's going to lie just perfectly there. If I let go, obviously we haven't fastened the back yet, but just to show you that that frame holds it in place from the front. It's going to look like this. Obviously these are just going to get sorted out as well. But then to secure it in place, I'm just going to get to the front here, because what I'm going to just do with these wires is take one at a time. The one that's kind of coming towards the back furthest, what I'd just like to do is bring it across right in front of the bail there, go to the side of the bail and then towards the back. And then with the other one here, do the same thing, bring it to the front of the bail, go to the side and around to the back. So just like this. They're now both coming out towards the back as well. Because what we're going to do then is use all these 1mm wires at the back to then help secure the cabochon on the back so it doesn't fall out there either. So to do that, what I like to do is make a bit of a nice design with these wires on the back as well. So it's obviously going to be functional, holding it in place, but because it's a pendant, when you're wearing it, it's likely going to flip around. So it is nice, I think, if the back is nice as well. So you can make any form of design that you want really, using these wires. I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do with this one. So what you can always do, and I like to do, is kind of just place it down, place my cabochon in there, just is going to help you know what it's going to look like. So just like that. And then I'm just going to shape these wires on the back to look nice. And like I said, you can do whatever you want to. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take the middle ones here. Well, basically they're all going to be split apart, so it's almost going to be symmetrical on both sides. So what I'm going to do is the ones that are coming from the large bail in my case here, so the middle ones on each side, if you group them in 3 like that. So that's, I'm going to pull it up gently. I'm going to make sure to keep nice curves in there. So pull it out to the side like this, towards the top up here. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Pull it outwards. And these are both the ones from the large part of the bail. And then just have a look here. Bring it up to you and then just see how symmetrical they are. It's not too crucial yet because we can still adjust it. I just want to roughly get them in place now. And then the middle ones here, the ones that are coming from the small part of the bail, I'm going to then also do the same, but underneath the previous one. So put a gentle curve in there, nicely out to the side, like that. Just use your fingers, warm up the wire and put some nice gentle curves in there. The middle one from the other side here, with the inner one. Put the curve in and bring it out to the side. And again, roughly make sure that they're symmetrical. We can adjust this some more when we go to place the cabochon in. And then the last two I have left are these ones that we brought towards the back from the front there. So with these, what I'm going to do is bring them in more towards the middle. So basically over the other ones there. So from the right side here, I'm crossing over the two that are coming out towards the right side, into the middle, put a curve in there, and have it come down through the middle like that, but still swooping towards the outside, towards the bottom. So a nice gentle curve in like this. And the other side the same thing, but the opposite direction. Come in towards the middle, put a nice curve in, and come down towards the bottom and out towards the side. And you can just spend a bit of time here making sure that they're sitting correctly and it all looks nice and symmetrical. Like this. And then what we have left to do now, like I said, just make sure they're as symmetrical as possible. Again, you can place your cabochon in just to make sure, it might help give a better look of it as well. See what it's going to look like. So like this. And have a look at it, and it's not too far off, it looks pretty good. Might just be a little bit of adjustment left, but then once you're happy with how they sit, I'm going to show you how we then secure them in place while obviously capturing the cabochon in as well. So once you're happy with how it's looking, then what we need to do is cut these wires down, so the ends, because they're too long for now. We don't want to cut them off right where it meets the frame, because we need to make something here at the end to be able to secure these to the frame. So what I'm going to do is cut about a centimetre or so out. Rather cut so you have too long left than too short, because you can always go in and gradually cut more off. So what I'm going to do is actually work with two at a time. So for now I'm going to take my two top ones first, because it's easier that way to make sure that those two are symmetrical first, move on to the next ones, and then make sure those are symmetrical. That's what I'm going to be doing. So cut these two down to roughly the same length, as good as you can. Like that. And then what I'm going to get out is my bail making pliers here, and this is just to make sure, because what I'm going to be doing now is some loops on the ends, and what I just want to do is make sure that they're the same size all around. So I'm just going to be using my bail making pliers for this. You can use round nose pliers, these are just fine to make it a bit easier. So I'm just going to use the smallest point on them here. So I can probably tell this is going to be too long, but I want to just start off, and you can just take the cabochon out, it's going to be a little bit easier. To then make your loop on one wire at a time here. Keep hold of it so it doesn't kind of lose its position and its shape. Then start bending this backwards. So the end goes back and meets itself basically. Make a regular loop there. All the way in. Then as you can see, it does sit too far out because we need the edge of that loop to sit on right on the inside of the frame. So for that, I know I can cut off a little bit. Just go in and cut off from the very tip in there, and go back in with your pliers, and then just keep swirling back, making sure you get a nice circle there. Still a bit too far out, cut off a bit more. But this is what I mean, it's better doing this because you can gradually cut off more and then get it just perfectly positioned rather than cutting off too much, because obviously you can't add any length to your wire. I'm getting closer now. It's just still a tad bit too far out, so I'm just going to cut off a tiny little bit still. Then that should be about it. Bring it back down and then press it down towards the frame there just to make sure. And that does look pretty good to me. And then I'm just going to do the same on the other side. So keep hold of that wire, start making your loop using the same size on my bail making pliers there, so it gets nice and even throughout. And again, because the other one was too long, this is going to be as well, but I'd rather cut it off gradually as I go, like that, as you can see, and just do the same thing. Cut off a bit at a time, you have more control that way. Re-swirl it. And then have a look at it. Make sure the positioning of your wires is still the same and they look symmetrical throughout. That one's a little bit lower, but I am making it shorter, so that will fix it as well. Just needs a little bit more, it's almost there. Like that. Bring it in. Just like this. And then they look pretty good to me then. Because when you press them down, the flush side, the outside of the loop there sits just against the biggest part, so the back part of the frame. If you look on the side there, that's what they need to sit against, because that's where we need to then connect them. So those are the two first ones in place. So once you're happy with those two, we can then move on to the next ones and just do the exact same thing. Cut off so you still have a decent length enough to make a loop here, rather a bit too much left than too little. Do both sides. So work on these two now at the same time. Make sure these two get symmetrical. That's the next level down. And just do the same thing. So get your pliers, make your swirl in the exact same manner, and then cut off a little at a time to make sure you get just, ends up sitting exactly where you want it to sit. So do that on these, the same on the ones down here. Now these ones, all you got to make sure of is that they kind of come towards a bit down the bottom there, not all the way straight down the middle, that does need to happen, but just a bit out to the side so we get that bottom part of the cabochon captured in as well. So now it looks something like this, and I'm quite happy with how all these are sitting now. All the loops, they're perfectly aligned with the frame, and they're also quite symmetrical. So what we need to do now is start attaching the loops to the frame there. So to do that, I'm going to get another length of my 0.4mm wire, and it doesn't have to be a specific length really, it's just enough for you to work with, because obviously we don't need much per loop, but you need to have enough to be able to sit and work with it as well. Quite often you'll have a bit of tails left from your other weaving that you've done. You could possibly use some of that if that's long enough. But then what we need to do is, I'm just going to start on one side here. I'm going to do one loop before I add in the cabochon, because then we need to obviously actually start attaching it. And then just attach my wire here to that one loop first, just by going around it through the loop there, attaching it. And I'm going to do that about twice. Just looping around just as if you were coiling, just like that. Make sure as well you can use your nails or get a tool and just press the wraps together so it's nice and even. And then what I'm going to do is make sure it's pushed down towards the frame there. Just keep hold of this tail, because that helps the loops and the wraps here not just keep spinning around. And then get to where it meets your frame, open space there. It's coming from underneath the loop up in between the two pieces. So I'm going to go around the outside here and just go in through that back one and through the middle one. So we're only going to be going around one of the frame wires there. And then push this down when you're tightening this. So it's going to end up sitting just nicely. Just like that. So that's one, so I'm going to at least go around one more time. So now we're going around, basically coiling around that back wire on the frame to connect these two pieces together. Make sure these coils are nice and tight as well, because then this will also just kind of blend in with the weave that you've done on the frame there. It won't be too obvious. So like that. And then you can do it another time if you feel the need to. Otherwise, now you're coming again up in between kind of that base wire on the frame and then the loop. So I'm going to go back to going around and through the loop there on its own, just for extra security. So down through the loop, pull it all the way, and then come back up. So basically now you're coiling around that loop again. So again, you can do this either once or twice. It really depends on the spacing that you've got on yours as well. Maybe you've made the loops a bit bigger. And then what I like to do, what we then need to do now, because it is fastened, what we need to do is finish off the ends here. The way I like to do that is make sure my ends are finished off basically on the frame. So instead of cutting them off here while they're at the loop, I'm just going to have them come back down around the base wire on the frame there. Plus it's just even more security as well. So go back to the bottom there. And then just basically wrap around that base wire on the frame a couple of times before we can then go in and cut off the excess. So always going through the last one, so the back one and the middle wire there on the frame. Just like this. Pull it through. As if you're just coiling. And just make sure it all sits nicely. Nice and flat and next to each other. So you can always, either if you've got nails, you can use your nails, or get some pliers here and just maneuver the wire in place if it's not quite right. So just like that. I'm just going to do the same on the other side with that little tail we have left, because right now that's attached to the loop. So I'm going to come down and just go, because I'm coming from the middle of the loop, go around basically to then come up through the frame there. Again, the back one and the middle one. So just like that. And you just, on the frame, you just wrap wherever you have space basically, because you obviously have the weave that you've already done that kind of meets out to the very back frame, the back wire. So just wrap in between them. Squeeze everything nice and tight. And just go around here a couple of times as well. I always want to make sure when I finish off my wires that I've done at least 2 or 3 wraps, so I know it's going to stay in place and be nice and secure. Just like that. So what we can always do before we cut anything off now, just put the cabochon in, double check that it's going to sit just perfectly, just like that. So it's going to basically lie just behind the cabochon. So it's going to be just right. So I'm going to get my cutters then, go in, cut off the tails here. Again, just leave a little bit, so the very end of the tails are going to end up being more towards the inside. So again, I take my flat nose or chain nose, grab the very end of that 0.4mm, squeeze it down and then roll it inwards. Just like that. And there's nothing on the outside here that can catch or scratch on anything. Do the same with the other side. Cut it off wherever you feel is best. And then squeeze in the end. Just like that. So that's the first one attached. Now I'm going to go over and do the other one on the other side. And for this, I'm actually going to start having my cabochon in place while I'm doing it. Just to make sure that I'm not kind of closing in the framework here before I put my cabochon in. So again, you just want to take your 0.4mm wire. You can always just attach it before you have the cabochon on there. And just do the exact same thing. You want to attach it to either your loop or your frame, it doesn't really matter. And then just go around a few times. So we're basically going to be doing the exact same thing as the other side. Just coiling it in place a couple of times first. Making sure they're nice and close together. Just like this. And then we're ready to attach that loop to the frame as well. Squeeze them together like that. And then just like before, use one of these ends first to attach on the one side. And then do the other side. Like I said, I'm just going to put in the cabochon. And then just press down on it. So you hold this side with your fingers and then press down with your thumb. Because the rest are in place here. If you just go on top of them and squeeze them down, you won't move them out of place. So just do that. And then use your tail here to attach it to the frame. And it's just the first couple of loops here that's a bit tricky, because obviously the cabochon is still loose. It can still come out. But once you've done this one and then you move down to the next level, it's going to start getting way more secure and basically be trapped in place. enough for you so you don't have to hold it so awkwardly. So just do this nice and gently so everything stays nice and neat. Go around the frame here, just coiling around that to secure it in place. And do that. Go to the other side, use this tail as well. Fill in the space on your frame that you got space to do some wrapping. So do that. And then you want to keep doing that with all of your loops here. And like I said, then cut off the tails and tuck them in nicely so they're not towards the outside of your frame. And then once you've done all your loops, then your cabochon will be nice and securely in place. It's not going to go anywhere at all, because on the front, this part, the frame, is slightly domed, or is slightly graduated inwards. That's why we made the different sizes of the base wires, which means it's going to just capture the edge of your cabochon just perfectly. So it's not going to come out the front, and we have all this at the back to secure it in place. So just do this all the way around, and then you're basically done with your cabochon. So I've attached my top two ones now, like I showed you, and also the next two in the same way. I've got these two bottom ones left to attach still, but what I just wanted to show you is that it's already really secure in there. So I'm turning it upside down, shaking it, and it's not coming out at all. So it's already a lot easier to work with now as well, because we don't have to hold on to the cabochon and the frame while it's still loose. Already when I attached the first one on the second level there in the middle, on the one side, once I've done that, it was already quite secure after that, so I popped in the cabochon properly. And then for the fourth one here and that side, it really is in there nice and secure. So all I'm going to do now is attach the bottom two in the exact same way, and then once you've done that, you'll be completely done. So I've now fastened the last two loops here on the bottom, and then that means the whole piece is done. So it's really nice and secure in there. It's not going to come out neither the front or the back, and that's what it looks like. So like I said, this is just how I finished this one off, but the possibilities are endless of how you want the back to look. Just make sure it's nice and secure in there so it's going to hold the stone from the back, and then this looks like this. So you have a nice framework around it, so if you want a quite simple pendant, you can do this, or like I said, you can use this as well as a base for then doing designs on the front. I'm going to do other videos in the future for that, so keep an eye out for them. Otherwise, that's how you make this. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to do this wire-wrapped cabochon using a 5-strand braid. And this is what it looks like. So I'm just using an oval stone for this, but you can use other sizes and shapes as well. This is just an example. And then this is just a floret stone. And then you have a 5-strand braid on the side, going all the way around, hugging it at the front to keep it in place.